Jyoti Mishra she's our keynote speaker today from PositScience. She's an assistant professor of neurology at University of California at San Francisco, and she's a senior scientist at PositScience. Here she is, Jyoti Mishra.
Thanks for the intro, and thanks for coming out, everybody, today on a Saturday. And I'm really glad to be part of this conference, and already listened to two really interesting talks. And it all meshes well with what I'm going to talk about too. So I'll bring up a little bit of what the previous speakers talked about as well. So today I'm here to talk about serious games for stronger brains. That's my job, to build serious games, and also my job as a neuroscientist to understand what happens in the brain when we build serious games. We're at a time where we can actually talk about building serious games because of the technologies that are out there that allow for game making to happen, and then also for game distribution to happen through internet-related platforms. So, before I jump into games, I'll first talk about what technology, where we're at with technology. Technology is immersive. The now and future of technology is omnipresent. These are scenes from daily life that you all would be very familiar with: talking, texting, playing on the computer, playing games, and also sleeping with your personal devices, right next to you, which is not a healthy habit, but in general, these are very familiar scenes. And what you're seeing over here and what these two individuals are doing is what's termed in and studied in the sciences as media multitasking, which is when you're engaging with more than one form of media together at the same time. And this happens a lot also these days. We're all trying to optimize how much information we can get through and how much tasks we can get done all at the same time. So media multitasking has become very common. And whether we like it or not, technology is here to stay. This is, if it's not our lives right now, today, it would be in a few years, where media is immersed in media and technologies is immersed in every part of life, from the moment you wake up, sending wireless signals to your wireless EEG-based signals to your coffee maker to make the coffee for today, or going to work, engaging with the doctor, or the laptop and computer. They're obvious things, and security, getting into buildings, getting into your own workplace, coming out, driving, navigation, GPS systems, and all the way into sleep. Sleep tracking is very common these days. So it's everywhere and involved in every part of our day. And this is 2020 in terms of estimations of the number of connected people is 4 billion. The number of apps is 25 plus million, and there are more embedded systems and more GBs of data. So where am I getting at with all of this? Well, what neuroscientists like to study is we actually are living in a different world. And what does this kind of media exposure and immersion do to our brains? And this has become possible to study over the last decade and a lot more because the normal population is engaging with such media. So I'm going to give you both sides of the coin of this story. The first part is media multitasking, which I introduced to you earlier. And that's, this is a famous study that came out in a reputed journal called PNAS in 2009, got a lot of press. This talks about media multitasking, high and low media multitaskers, people who engage with media a lot versus not. So this is one of the tests from the study. It's a memory test where people are presented with items on the screen. They're supposed to remember the exact position, and also the orientation of these red color lines. And then the blue color lines are just distractors. And then after a certain interval of time, a pause, you're presented with another test array, and you're asked whether these lines, these new red lines, match the original lines or not. This is one of the tests in the study. And what you're looking at is performance of low media multitaskers and then high media multitaskers. So this is people who think that they have high productivity, high attention skills, but when you actually test them in the laboratory, this is what you find in terms of that heavy media multitasking leads to performance decline. Then also on the same test, when you look at response times like processing speed, how long it takes you to process this sort of information, well, it turns out at when there are distractions that are present, then high media multitaskers tend to have longer response times. So higher is poorer, so longer response times is poorer. So this is one study that showed over multiple tests. I think about 230 people is what they were measuring over, where they showed negative effects of media multitasking. This is another study that came out also in 2009. These are what they were testing high and low media multitaskers on problem difficulty. These are tests called the Raven's progressive matrices tests. So these are tests that are very common in IQ testing kind of problems. And so when you look at the hardest difficulty problems, that's where the high media multitaskers tend to show accuracy decrements. Then here's another study that looked at correlations between they looked in the literature about correlations between different things, but at the same time looked at when you're exposed to violence in the media and how much real life aggression that you show. And that correlation coefficient is about 0.3. It's not very high, but notice that it's about similar to correlation coefficients that are related to smoking and lung cancer, and we all know about that and the public policies that have led to a smoking ban in many public places and so on. So what I want to get from this curve, though, is that all of these studies are correlational. Science is not at this stage about causation, it's about correlation. And so this is an example of that. In this study, they're looking at measures of impulsivity in terms of being impulsive when you have to pay attention to something over a long period of time, in terms of your responses, so motor movements, or not being able to plan, sensation seeking as to how fast you get bored, disinhibited in what you say, thrill seeking. And it turns out that high media multitaskers on a lot of these abilities tend to score higher. So they have there's higher impulsivity and sensation seeking correlates with high media multitasking. So whether these people innately were like this and so they gravitate towards high media multitasking, or that high media multitasking then creates a positive cycle that then leads to high impulsivity and high sensation seeking. I mean, these are questions that science at this stage cannot answer. This evidence is, what I want to remind you is that it's correlational evidence. But still, even though it's correlational evidence, should we be rearing our children and the young of our society, and I'd say even adults, in a high media setting? And so this is a cartoon making it obvious, and this is mostly passive engagement, which is exposure to TV. I like the example of what happened to a lot of the Baby Einstein stuff. There's a really Baby Einstein related bands. There's a really innovative cognitive neuroscientist up at Washington University, Patricia Cole, and she's looked at babies interacting with media from 6 months of age versus talking to a particular person, and not talking, I mean listening to an actual person talking versus listening to media. And then they're exposed to languages. And they found that only when you're actually exposed to languages at even that very early age through an actual person, not through media, that's where you imbibe the knowledge. And she's been one of the first people to be instrumental towards pushing for better quality interaction in children's lives. And also the APA, the American Pediatric Association, talks about no media exposure to children below the age of 2 years. And even though, I mean, we can't really sort this out by doing a controlled trial in humans by saying, okay, we'll put these kids with media versus other kids without media, but we can do some experiments like this with rats. And this is a study from 2012 where actually this is a study with mice. So they're taking really young mice, they're putting them for 6 hours a night for 6 weeks. They're exposed to LED lights of different colors that are synchronized with children's videos such as Powerpuff Girls and Pokemon. These were the actual videos that were, the actual sounds that were used in the experiment. And it turns out that after their 6-week, 6 hours a night exposure period, these same mice that are exposed versus the ones that are not exposed, they become more thrill-seeking in terms of exploration in the open arms of a maze, in terms of how much they interact with novel objects. So in some ways, I'm not trying to say that, of course, go out and look for new experiences, be bold at new experiences, but excessive impulsivity is not good. Excessive thrill-seeking is not good, because in adolescence that correlates with heightened risk for drug abuse and for sexual misbehavior and so on. So there are all these interesting correlations that are coming up right now. And so now I actually want to switch a little bit to talk to you because I'm a scientist, so you want to be skeptical about everything and tell you both sides of the story. So there are things that heavy media multitasking tends to not hurt. So this is a study that looked at audiovisual integration, which we do every day. That is, we take in information from all our senses all together, and that makes for the rich experiences that we experience every day. So essentially, this is multisensory integration, so that if people had to take in information sources from audition and from vision, and that was better in heavy media multitaskers. And that would be something that you might intuit from the fact that they are very used to taking in information from multiple sources at the same time, because that's what they do in their daily lives. And then the next one is actually evidence from the gaming world. And this is a large body of evidence that is collected over the last 10 years in the field of action video gaming. So these are first-person shooter games like this one, and the speaker before me talked a little bit about simulation. So games have become a large part about a large component of education as well. So here we're talking about action video games versus non-action video games. And this is a work that has come out of the Bavelier lab at Rochester. She's now at Geneva, University of Geneva. But essentially, all of the work that she's shown, and a lot of others have replicated, is that action video gamers tend to have higher cognitive abilities when they're tested on attention-related cognitive functions. So for example, here you're looking at enumeration, which is basically you're shown a bunch of items on the screen, and then you have to say, just as a flash, you don't count them, but you have to be able to say, are they, how many are there? So estimating the number of items on the screen. So it turns out that the video game players, they make lesser errors on these tasks, so their curve is slower than that of non-gamers. Then you look at peripheral vision, so it's something that's not in complete line of sight, but is in the periphery. And here, gamers tend to have higher peripheral vision, no matter how far in eccentricity you go in the visual field, from 10 degrees, 20 degrees, or 30 degrees. Then you can look at attention over time. So attention over time is essentially you're presenting information really fast next to each other, so two pieces of information that come really fast. And then you have to tell both those what were both those pieces of information correctly. And everybody has this physiological curve where initially, when things are really close together, we're talking milliseconds together, you can actually take them both in. But after some time, I think this happens around 250 milliseconds or so, you're still processing the first thing, so you can't really take in the second thing that well. This happens in everybody. And then eventually this U-shaped curve comes back when two things become more and more further apart. And this is, I think that the lag scales here are like from milliseconds to 1 or 2 seconds at the max. But again, when you're looking at attention over time, the gamers tend to do better overall in terms of how much the X is the second item, so how much they can accurately detect both items at the same time. And this is actually a study I did in 2010, kind of looking at what really is happening in the brain of these video game players, and why are they the way they are. And so what we did was look at EEG recordings while these people, both video game playing experts versus non-gamers. So experts are people who play 5 hours a day, 5 hours a week for at least the last year, if not more. And we're looking at their EEG. The snapshots you're seeing here are the back of their head, which is basically their visual cortex, the part of their brain that senses visual information. And it's always one-sided because information is usually contralaterally coded. The left side codes for the right side of the visual field, and the right side codes for the left side of the visual field. But essentially what I want you to take away from this slide is when they're doing a really attention-demanding task, well, it turns out that taking in the relevant information is the same in both gamers and non-gamers. What differs between them is how they code for distracting information, that is all the other things that are happening around you. And the gamers tend to tune out that distracting information better. They're able to suppress the distractions better than the non-gamers in the brain, in the way they process the distractions in the brain. And that was like one mechanism by which we think that they're able to have better cognitive abilities. So with that part of the talk, this is kind of like where we're left at, is like pediatricians say children should watch less television and interact more, Bobby, and the kid says it's Billy. So what's important here is the term interaction, and what we want to promote is essentially positive interaction, whether that can be with a human or whether that can be with technology that enables better interaction and better habits. And that's what we essentially want to build, is positive versus negative interactions, right? So that is where my work is building interactive technologies, and in essence serious games, which hopefully with the testing and the validation that we do are for neurocognitive enhancement as opposed to hurting our brains. So here I first acknowledge the people that I work with, and it's a great privilege to be working with these people. This is Michael Merzenich on the left, who is a pioneer in brain plasticity since the 1960s. He basically started the field of brain plasticity, has done numerous scientifically prestigious studies in the field showing that the brain changes with learning, and is also the founder of PositScience. He directs the research arm of Posit, where I'm a senior scientist. It's called the Brain Plasticity Institute, and so it's a nice place to work because we interact daily with the computers. The neuroscientists are constantly interacting with the computer scientists, figuring out how we should be building the game based on the studies that we do in the labs. And then on the right side, he is Adam Ghazali. He's also a neuroscientist, Ph.D., M.D. We have a lab at UCSF, which I'm part of. And here, again, Adam has been instrumental in pushing the integration of novel technological methods with cognitive training, and how to basically make the best brain plasticity related tools that engender positive plasticity. So you may or may not have heard him, but he's a prolific speaker and gives hundreds of talks a year, and I encourage you to listen to his talks as well. So Adam's and our lab is essentially we have two spots. The technology lab is at the neuroscapelab.com, and then gazlab.com is the other place where the scientific work is hosted. I encourage you to look up that if you're interested. And then just a brief about first the intro to the PositScience work, which Sasan already did beautifully. If you ever are inspired to look at the brain training exercises that have been built and are commercially available, this is at the Brain HQ side, where you can train on a number of different cognitive abilities, and each of them have a bunch of games under them. And Sasan mentioned 26 games. In reality, we have in the research arm, we have hundreds of games that we're currently validating, and we don't put out stuff that is not validated on the commercial platform. The commercial platform only currently incorporates things that have had scientific evidence, and that is, and this I'll skip over because Sasan already talked about this, the idea that you can personalize training to, the limited number of hours or minutes that you have per day. Each exercise doesn't last more than 5 minutes, and you can get a whole series of exercises. And then also, other than personalized training, you can take a course based on your own personal life history and experience. And in some ways, it's a privilege to be part of Posit because it's one of the only companies in the field that's involved in so much scientific validation. The fact that we have currently 4,000 participants part of randomized trials, it's not a small number because I do randomized controlled trials all the time, and they are hard things to do logistically, and evidence comes out after a lot of testing over a couple of years or more, and so this should be appreciated how much scientific validation has gone into Posit's work. And then this also is a slide that Sasan already familiarized you with about the cognitive benefits that one sees in terms of speed of processing. Standardized measures of memory and attention tend to go down by, you become equal to what a person 10 years younger than you becomes. So a person 10 years younger than you would have the scores as you if you did the brain training. So then driving related benefits, driving is, especially in old age and in teenagers, we've partnered with the AAA Foundation to help with auto risk and at-fault auto crash incidences have been reduced, and the dangerous driving maneuvers have been reduced, and so basically the attention and the focus and peripheral vision and all these things that we help build with cognitive training helps with these with daily life driving, and that's like a strong piece of evidence that's there for Posit studies. And then other real-world benefits. And the second one is over here is reduced predicted medical expenditure, which is what you want to look at this as is preventative healthcare. It's not really that suited as healthcare for when you become really cognitively sick. It is preventative in terms of something that you incorporate that may be beneficial while you're, basically to preserve cognition in its current state or prevent it from declining further. And this is part of the data from the Brain HQ site, 2014. This year's data is like thousands of people training, and you're looking at multiple cognitive abilities such as being able to search for an item in space, divided attention, being able to multitask, being able to remember faces, being able to remember items, tracking items, how you are able to enunciate sounds or remember phonemes and discriminate them. So on the top are response times. Response times, you want them to be faster. So the fact that the speed with which you process information is faster, and that becomes faster with training. And the other thing that happens is that your scores or your accuracies on these tests get higher. So the data that I'm presenting to you is essentially to say, as a scientist, I'm not saying, go and do this stuff, but I want you to know that be the informed consumer. There are a lot of brain training companies that are out there, similar to other things that you may take for your health, such as multivitamins and all that. Whenever you choose something for your health, do that in an informed way. What has been proven and what has not been proven is basically the message that I would give you as a scientist, not like as a promoter of the company. I'll switch gears to some of the work that we've done at the Ghazali lab at UCSF at this point. So this work, we collaborate between the labs a lot, but this work is independent of the Posit work. So this is, Nature is like one of our the biggest scientific journals that is in the field. It's kind of like the Rolling Stone of, or like getting into the New York Times or something. But essentially, so this study was published in older adult study doing cognitive training. We actually have a co-author in the back, hey. And she's, so essentially in this, this study was touted as a game changer. The lab spent a lot of time after this study to say that this particular game was not the game changer. The fact that cognitive training can benefit your brain is a game changer because there has been a lot of flack in big journals about cognitive training not doing any benefit to you. So, which is also true in the fact that if you make games scientifically and they're based on neuroscientific mechanisms, you can build the right thing. But if they are, just built from a game perspective, just for engagement, but not taking in not improving the cognitive deficits directly, they can be made badly too. So. There have been a lot of studies out there that have shown that this kind of training doesn't work, but if you make it in a certain way, that is, it will work. So this is evidence of people doing multitasking. So they're doing a driving task, and they're also having to respond to signs that come up in your screen. This is like something that you all are familiar with, like driving on the freeway and cars change lanes, or you're stopping at the light, or a pedestrian walking when they're not supposed to and whatnot. So we're doing this all the time when we're multitasking during driving. So it's essentially that kind of a game setting. But the problem is that whenever we do multitask, there's a cost, which is what I'm showing on the y-axis here. Essentially, 0% is when you're doing a single tasking. And whenever you multitask, no matter who it is, there's always a cost. Turns out that people in the 20s do really well at multitasking, and then after that, it's always a sliding slope. In kids, it's the ability to multitask is also not as well developed. Now, we do brain recordings before and after such tasks, and so this is looking at the same EEG-based responses, and this is a response in the frontal part of the brain right here. It's in the theta frequencies, so that's about 5 hertz, and theta is an important process in being able in cognitive control. So cognitive control is essentially how you control your environment through your cognition. So all the abilities related to attention, related to decision making, invoke cognitive control. And theta is a good neural marker that comes up or is modulated whenever cognitive control is happening. So when we're looking at theta, so this is an oscillation in the brain essentially. And the brain communicates a lot with oscillations. There are rhythms in the brain throughout, and they happen at slow frequencies as well as high frequencies. And they pretty much work like telecommunication in that high frequency waves are local, and low frequency waves help communication between different parts of the brain. So a low frequency communication is like, say, from frontal cortex telling your senses, behave this way, or control the world this way, or this is a distractor, suppress it this way, this is something you must attend to, so enhance it this way. So 5 hertz is a low frequency neural response that you can measure at frontal sites that is related to when you're doing a highly challenging cognitive task. But with that premise, what I want to show you is that young adults have high frontal theta. This is the intensity curve. Older adults have much lower frontal theta. And then they do a month of training, I think it's 12 hours of training. This is the older adults curve point after training. So the brain is very plastic in old age, and it can invoke the same neural mechanisms that young people are using and even surpass them through training. And so this study got a lot of attention in press because of because it was really rigorous, but B, at the same time it showed evidence for neural rejuvenation in humans. So this is what we mean by when we say, the brain is plastic, and what you want to do is exercise it. And commercially, though, I know that there are a lot of brain training companies that are out there. Where we are is there's a technology trigger, which is like you think about health games or serious games. This is called the Gartner hype cycle curve, and it's actually true for all technology, any kind of technology trigger. And what you see here is that initially there's a peak of inflated expectations. I think sometimes the non-informed public is about here. They think like, this kind of brain training is really good for me, and or any kind of brain training is good, not being driven by which is the quality source or not. In reality, where scientists are is like, there's been a peak of inflated expectations, and we've gone through a lot of early studies, and then there's been a trough of disillusionment where we've been, that all brain training doesn't work, and there have been big studies about that. And then I think where we are right now with the game changer study from last year, the multitasking neuroeraser study, we're about here, that we think that there is some promise in the serious games that we're building, and we will eventually be, develop better and better technologies that help the brain, and plateau of productivity, not just in terms of the dollars earned, but in terms of the health of the public. So we haven't stopped yet. I mean, like I said, the research arm still has a bunch more games and technologies that we're still innovating on and still testing. And so I want to just give you a glimpse of a couple of such technologies that we're working on. So this is evidence from the Neuroscape lab. So where we're building at UCSF, where we're building games such as the mind-body trainer. So in the mind-body trainer, we know that we're obviously embodied minds, right? Like, we don't do things separate from our bodies. And at the same time, we all know how beneficial physical activity is for us. So what the demo at the bottom it will be about, if the video plays, is my colleague Joaquin actually playing a cognitive task game where he has to actually switch between doing two different tasks at the same time on the screen, but actually being able to respond with his body movements instead of having to sit in front of a computer. So synergistic mind and body training, as opposed to them being in isolation, which happens a lot these days. So so I see, like, I think you can only get the video to play with the mouse, but if somebody can just press the mouse button, but if you just click on the Okay, thanks. And the grunting was not for show. This is a hard task. Over the 3 minutes, he can his cardiac output his heartbeat is really high, and he goes to his VO2 max, which is like things how people measure athletic performance. And then another game, this is actually a virtual reality rhythm game. So musical practice has been shown to be really beneficial for the brain. Like a lot of skills that you immerse in and challenge over time and get better over time. And this individual is actually Mickey Hart from the Grateful Dead. He's like a renowned drummer from that band, and he's also very interested in the work that we do in the lab. And I don't know if you can see it or not, but he's wearing the Oculus Rift head goggles, so he's inside an immersive virtual reality environment that he sees, and so he's not seeing the world around him, but the 3D virtual environment, and then also composing music at the same time. And then there's a clip of that. If Anya, if you could just click on that, that'd be great. The second clip, yeah.
I know, if you can see what Mickey can say. He sees it all in 3D. Boom. Nice. Nice.
How am I doing? Am I fast enough or not?
Very yes.
I know I have some professionals in this room.
So this is informal development. Like, this was during the development part. It was just a meeting in the lab as opposed to like an actual experiment. It's not developed yet for an experimental stage yet. But what Mickey was doing there was he was composing music and at the same time engaging with a cognitive task, which was responding to this asteroid that appears in the middle of the screen over here at random periods of time, and it had to be a certain color. That's when he responds. And even Mickey, who's actually a very, very skillful musician, likes this environment because he's completely immersed in it while he is within the virtual reality setting. And so, so in some ways, what I'm trying to convey with this is that there are new technologies in the pipeline that are taking us and challenging us in the ways that we have not been able to until now. And these technologies are also amenable to you know, people who, when we talk about effort, a person, you know, by just telling a person, you know, get off your butt and go work out, maybe that's not possible for people, but they might gravitate to a game and they might start playing, and this technology becomes the hook that makes you do things, you know, that are good for you over a long period of time. And so that's how I kind of see technology, like getting people towards making technological advances that get people to do healthy behaviors for their brain. Because in reality, where medicine is going is that we're all going to be living for 100 years, but our brains are not going to be as smart at when we are at 100. And so we want to keep up our cognitive health as good as our, you know, our physical bodies that are going to last 100 years. So, and this is like as one of the last innovative things in the labs, which is my favorite closed loop project. They're all closed loop projects, but this is my favorite project because I work on it. But essentially, all the technologies that I've shown you are closed loop technologies. What that means is essentially you have a person interacting with technology on a computer. So in this case, this is games. There's real-time behavior that goes into the game. How we make the game is adaptive to human performance. That is, the game monitors how the person is doing and adapts the challenge level to either get more challenging if the person is doing well, or less challenging if the person is doing poorly. So it's personalized and adaptive to the person. And then the game provides digital feedback very frequently, telling the person how you did. And because of our intrinsic brain plasticity mechanisms, we adapt to the digital challenge and become better. And so this is what we build all the time, but what if we can do this with our minds directly as opposed to our hands and feet and moving around? And that's the project which I'm leading right now, which is this person you know, interacting with a device, but with an EEG cap on within a task setting. There's already a field like this called the neurofeedback field, but we're making more real-time advances so that this technology becomes, you know, so that the brain and the machine basically interact on a millisecond level. How you're performing on your task, your level of neural performance and challenge is immediately tracked. And for this, I will give you a video of the glass brain technology, which we actually launched just this year. And this is a recording of a person, which we can actually see in real time now, is a person's brain while they're wearing EEGs on, doing a task, lighting up different parts of the brain. These are the different frequencies that I talked about, and at the same, in terms of we understand them to code the neural signals. And so we can look at the power in different frequencies, and then you have these fiber tracks, which is also we can get from a person during MRI imaging. And from the fiber tracks, we know exactly where the information is flowing from one side to the other. And another beautiful part about this is that you can actually wear Oculus goggles, virtual reality goggles, and fly into your own brain and look at the different parts of the brain lighting up and the connectivity between the different brain regions firing. So currently it's a beautiful technology. We're validating its how much it really, how well it actually represents data in the lab, and we're going to be using this year and next year to be able to self-regulate ourselves. What if we can get into our own brains and be able to look at it and get it better? So if I ever talk in 2 years, I'd be able to show you results from something like this. So self-regulation of the mind. And I encourage you to look at the lab site. You're also welcome to visit. We're just across the the bridge at the Mission Bay campus. And if you want to, have a fly-through demo of a person's brain, of course, to get your own brain in there, you'd have to have an MRI done before, which is also possible in the lab, but that costs. But you could have the experience of flying through another person's brain, and that's really crazy. Even for a scientist, that's crazy, because I've not seen something like this before, although I look at brains all the time for the last 20 years, probably. But here, not to discourage anybody. So what do we do before these innovations land in your home? I've shown you technology that's out there that is beneficial and is already commercial, but there's lots of technology that's still in innovative stages. I'm happy that it's actually not in your homes yet, because we want to be able to say that this works before it gets to you, as opposed to just a marketing campaign. So if I want you to take away something from my talk, is just this slide, which is this. Use the secret sauce is to how we build these games. And this, what is the components of the secret sauce? There are only two. One is challenge, and the second is feedback. And that's how we build our games. So I'll just explain that really briefly in the last slide. And this is something that you want to take away. I could give you the scientific evidence for this, but I'll take you another half hour, so I'm going to spare you that. But essentially, if you don't have these games, right, and you don't want to engage with the technology, what you want to do is challenge, but without judgments. Games do not judge you. At the same time, there's some evidence out there that says that people are actually really happy talking to virtual therapists rather than to a real therapist, because a virtual therapist does not judge you. So when you incorporate challenge in your lives, do not judge yourself. And so challenge means mental, in terms of new skills, new languages, and going to new places and being able to navigate yourself around these new places. Physical challenge, very important. Exercise, which is cardiac exercise and strength training. Do that 7 days a week, and that does a lot for not just cognitive health, but emotional health, which is something that this conference is about. So challenge your levels in these domains such that you get better and better over time. Feedback. Feedback is, what I mean by feedback is there are two sorts of feedback, from self and from others. From self, what you want to be asking every day is, am I mindful? Am I grateful? Gratefulness is a big component of positive psychology, being grateful to your environment, eating the right things, and sleeping well. Getting the amount of sleep that your body needs is a really important component of cognition. And when in my first year as a parent, I realized the necessity of sleep. Basically, my cognitive, I basically had cognitive decline towards where an 80-year-old's curve would be, but that's really important. And then others, it's really important to cultivate close friendships and social circles. And what I mean by circle of care is essentially not caring just about yourself, but about people around you, and expanding that circle of care not to just your families, but to your community and and humanity in general, which makes you a little bit more selfless and more about just going about your challenge as opposed to other things. But so what I want to say is that think about these things almost daily. This is how we get better in our lives. And even though there will be devices out there that'll give you some amount of tracking on these devices, and games that'll make you better, but in the end, it's just about you, your mind, and your body, and not anything connected to it. And if you do these things with diversity and bring in consistency over time, increasing levels of challenge, what I will guarantee you today is 100% brain health by the time you're 100, which most of you will actually live to. So with that, I'll just thank all of my, both my mentors, people who work with me, because technology is on the internet. I have all these different project sites that I get to work with right now, which is amazing. And so I thank all the people on those sites, and I'll thank you for listening and coming out on a Saturday, and any questions that you would have.
Who's got a question? Leslie has a question.
So I only believe in stuff that is scientifically validated. Unfortunately, or fortunately, for Lumosity, they have made a decision to focus more on commercialization than on science. I mean, I'm just, as a skeptic, I can't really make recommendations on other pieces of work. What I recommend is to be informed in terms of, if you want to look at any of their product at a particular game, see if there's evidence for it. Yeah, I mean, I guess you get badges for a better level of play, and that is for engagement to move you to a higher level. The times are right now that, you know, when we do any kind of game development, there's a pendulum that we cross between science and fun. And the fun part is how we build in the reward systems to make the person actually do these exercises. And also part of the reality is that if fun is not involved, which comes in these rewards of badges and leaderboards and whatnot, then the person does not comply the full training in a serious game setting. And yeah, I mean, I don't know if I look at that as judgment, in the sense that frustration about, I guess what I meant by judgment is that being frustrated about whether, oh, today I can, I can't, do the basketball hoop from this level, but tomorrow I can, or lift a 15-pound weight today, but tomorrow I can. So that kind of judgment of not like self-defeating judgment. There are, I would say that yes, in games, so this is entertainment games. There are very, very, poisonous hooks in some ways that I call them poisonous because in entertainment games, sometimes, people are rewarded so frequently and to such a great extent that they forget their real lives and their family and their environments and whatnot. And so what we try to do with health games and serious games is essentially try to get a modicum of feedback that gets you through the training, but not, I guess we're not trying to build it so that you develop self-defeating judgment.
How about daycare?
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's a recording because I'm showing it to you right now. Nobody's wearing the cap right now, but it was recorded in real time while a person wore the cap and was doing a task. So the structure is MRI based. So the basically the contours of the brain that you saw and the fiber tracks, like where they're going. The model is MRI based, but the dynamics that you're seeing in time, that's all EEG. Right. Yeah, we co-register. Yeah. What's my brain training regimen? Oh my God. Well, there are two types of people in the world. I do have a brain training regimen because I think about this all the time, and it's about being healthy till you're 100. So there are two types of people in the world in terms of people who work through the night and they tend to have more divergent thinking, and people who plan a lot and get up in the morning. I'm a 4 o'clock wake-upper. I plan my day in the first hour. I get through all my email in the first hour. Then I don't touch email. I work out the next hour. Then my kid wakes up, and then we get to work. Then I focus on basically, figuring out science and plasticity in the brain. And, I'm not saying, so that's like being really intellectually involved is a very important part of life all the time, not going through drudgery, but actually, going through life with a lot of intellectual stimulation and thinking about new projects and whatnot. And then after 5 p.m. I do not engage with any technology because yes, I play during development. There are games, some of these modules, we just launched a program for children, underprivileged children in foster care settings who have not had, who have early life neglect because of poor parenting and whatnot, so they live in foster care, and we want to be able to give them a cognitively enriching setting. So that's a 30-hour program. I've probably played most of it. My play is not, compliance-based, that I will play this exercise through all its levels, but I need to test that everything is debugged and works properly. There are games that I've innovative games that I've first created. Say in the auditory domain, there was one game that was all about figuring out a particular frequency, 1,000 hertz frequency. Every time it changes, but essentially say a frequency of sound, and while suppressing a lot of different frequencies. And when I was developing that, there was 30 hours of play there was so much play of that after that, for the next 3 months, I had perfect pitch. I could tell what a certain horn would go through and like what is the frequency of that. But that lasted 3 months. So when I talk about anything that you do healthy for your brain, you want to be consistent. If I stop working out today, I'm not going to be able to lift the same 20-pound weight as I, in a year, if I wasn't lifting it throughout. So that is something that people ask a lot. Is brain training sustainable? We've shown in studies that it's somewhat sustainable for a 6-month time period. Other people have also gone on for longer time periods with measures and shown that there's some sustainability. But the brain, it's plastic all the time. What you use it or lose it, essentially. So if you're doing things that are good for you, you'll keep it, otherwise not.
One more question. Yes, please.
High point in terms of resolution? Or? Yeah, so there, in reality, there is no commercial equipment out there that's like, a lot of it is co-development in the lab with companies that are startups or new companies that want to get into the arena of EEG, especially EEG that is mobile and can communicate on the Wi-Fi, because essentially we want to get this technology out to people to be able to do it in their homes. And so if that has to be a reality, the really wired medical grade technology, the gold standard, there are lots of gold standard equipments, like the company we use is Biosemi, but that's a $60,000 equipment piece. You're not going to get it to the home setting. The glass brain is modeled on a San Diego-based company called Cognionics. It's a 64-channel headset that's not available anywhere in the world. We actually co-develop it with them. Their price point is probably, currently in the $10,000 to $20,000 for the equipment that they make, but we're working with them so that you can get such technology. There's always, obviously the feasibility in the field versus what the technology can offer in terms of resolution. There's always a push-pull between that, but we want to get it to a stage that we can get it to the people while not compromising resolution too much. So what is what can you get? What is the highest quality? I guess I think we don't need more than 64 channels in the field setting. It can go up to 256 channels on the head. We don't need that. The more channels there are, there's also cross-coupling related problems, so we don't need that. In terms of frequency, we can measure every millisecond in the lab how the activity is changing. There is the mobile stuff these days comes to every 3 milliseconds or every 2 milliseconds, and that's sufficient.